Hi everyone, good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you. It was a normal workday at the Imperial Bank, with as many customers as usual, but towards the end of the day the crowd had thinned out and there were few more customers. A girl of about 7 years old walked in. She was very poorly dressed. A washed-up jacket with a broken zipper, old pants and boots, obviously too big. She was holding a child's pistol in her hand in a Zydian color. The guard stared at the child and thought, what is she doing here, so small and alone? Where are her parents? It seems a pity to kick her out. It's cold outside. Let her get warm. Child's face was very serious for her age, and her eyes were teary-eyed. The girl confidently walked up to the window and pointed her toy gun at the cashier with the words, "Auntie, make me a millionaire. Give me some money. I really need it. Or else everyone will be sick." And the child burst into bitter tears. The cashier, Diane, had seen a lot in her many years of work, and she thought that nothing could get through to her. But here even she was stunned and did not know how to react. She could either cry or laugh at the ridiculous, childish prank. According to the instructions in any incomprehensible or dangerous situation, the cashier is obliged to press the alarm button and call the banker in the hall. The woman decided to do so to be on the safe side. Otherwise, what if anything? A few minutes later, John came out into the hall and looked in amazement at the little girl with the gun, who kept sobbing and smearing tears on her cheeks, and asked Diane, "What happened? Is there an emergency? What's the problem?" The woman replied with a smile, "Well, this little guy wants money. He asked for a loan, or else he threatens me with a gun. I understand that it is a toy, but just in case I decided to invite you." The man was dumbfounded, but before he could say a word, a woman of about 75 came running into the bank, out of breath. She too was poorly dressed, but neat. The older woman grabbed the little girl's hand and started babbling. "Anna, honey, why are you going alone? I can't keep up with you. You've stirred people up." John is dazed. "So, dear lady, is this your granddaughter? What kind of a circus are you trying to pull here? What a bunch of burglars. You can get punished for jokes like that. We are a serious organization. The child should be better looked after." Grandma only waved her hand. "How can it not be arranged, the circus? All the banks have already refused us a loan, so Anna is desperate. Her mother is dying in a coma and needs an operation, and they're asking a lot of money for her. What choice does the child have? Tell me, for God's sake." She must have seen a lot of movies and decided to take a desperate step. "Forgive her, for God's sake." John took another stern look at the baby. Something about her caught him. She looked like someone else, but he could not figure out who. The child folded her arms in the form of a prayer and looked him straight in the eyes and pleaded, "Dude, lend us some money, please. Mommy's dying. Just don't send us away. Grandma and I have nowhere else to go." Something ticked inside and the banker took pity. He waved them off. "Okay, let's go to my office and talk in detail. You tell me what your story is, and then we'll see what we can do." In the office, the elderly woman sighed and began to talk. "I haven't even introduced myself to you, John. My name is Claudia. You see, it's a long and complicated story, but I'll tell you the main thing. Anna's mother's name is Maria, and she and her daughter rent a corner from me. The woman is good, decent, hard-working. She sells bakery kiosk. It was hard enough for her. She worked 12 hours a day, just to have enough to live on and for her child. And then 2 months ago, Maria was coming home late at night, and she was run over, right on a crosswalk. And most importantly, she fled right away. The ambulance was called by a passerby. So she fell into a coma, and she needs urgent surgery. Here, I've all her diagnoses in hand. I made copies, take them. Where can you get that kind of money? There's no one to help, no relatives. Anna's on me now. My pension is pennies, and I'm already about 80 years old. I feel sorry for Maria and Anna. I cannot. After all, if she dies, the child is immediately taken away to the orphanage. What future awaits her? The situation is a dead end. Have pity. Look at the documents. Maybe you can get a loan. Do not think Maria will recover. All will work out to the penny and even more. We'll pay it back together, little by little. Well, not to die a man if there is no money after all. John looked at his watch and said, I understand everything. I'll look at the documents at home tonight. I will try to help in any way I can. The bank is not mine, it's my father-in-law's. So it's not just up to me. And your situation is really difficult. I'm sorry I have to go. Anna, don't be sad. Here, have a chocolate bar. And he smilingly handed the baby a large milk candy. The child timidly took it and said quietly, Thank you. I believe you will help us. I don't want Mommy to die. The banker returned home to the posh mansion. There was no change there. There was food from the restaurant in the kitchen, and his wife didn't even look at him or greet him. On the contrary, she was dressed in a provocative dress with a huge slit and steel-toe heels. Victor asked tiredly, Where do you think you're going at night? Dory wrinkled her nose and answered grudgingly, To the bachelorette party. We decided to take a break with our friends. Why can't I? The man shook his head disapprovingly. Haven't you been out a lot at night? And it's not exactly bachelorette party attire, is it? Don't you think you're out of line? Dory suddenly grinned sarcastically with her brightly colored mouth and replied caustically, As far as I remember, you got a job as a banker with my father's help, so be happy. And the rest is none of your business. See, I'll be late. And she left, clacking her heels loudly without even looking back. Victor sank tiredly into his chair. He felt sick and disgusted. I'm so sick of everything. This marriage of convenience and this obnoxious silicone hussy Dory and this mansion where everything is alien. It's like I'm living the wrong life, for God's sake. And then he remembered the old woman's papers, and they were still in his briefcase. Well, since the evening was lost anyway, I would at least look through it. And he went deeper into reading. But when he saw the name of the patient, he almost collapsed. He even shook from shock. Mary. It cannot be. Oh my God. So that's who Anna looks like. Exactly. The man hopped over to the bar, got some cognac, poured it into a glass, and took a good sip. Then he leaned back in his chair and plunged into deep memories of the past. Maria grew up in the countryside. Her childhood was not a happy one. Her parents died too early, her mother in childbirth. Her father was hit by a combine 3 years later, through negligence. So her granddaughter was brought up by her grandfather and grandmother. They lived tight, poorly fed from the garden, and the goat helped out. The grandmother made delicious cheese and cooked milk porridge. As a child, Maria could be called an ugly duckling rather than a beauty. Thin, unshapely, and a little wild. But when she graduated from high school, everything changed. She simply turned into a beautiful swan. A slender, shapely beauty with prominent third-size breasts and plump by nature, sensual lips. All the local men openly looked at her, smacking their tongues. The woman became seriously worried, and all taught her granddaughter how to make sense. Watch it, Maria. Don't mess with me. Men have one thing in mind. They are all soft, they promise a lot, and if something happens, bang and into the bushes. The girl remembered her grandmother's words and steadfastly held her ground, letting no one near her. The job situation in the village was quite sad, and Maria went to work on a farm with the Stones, a local rich man, out of hopelessness. She was just getting settled, trying to get used to a hell of a lot of hard work. But it wasn't to be. The rich man was a well-known lover of women and booze. Everyone in the village knew that. So he began to woo Maria. The back pinches, Then the breast looks intently, then tries to press the frightened girl in a dark corner. And he whispers to her, "Maria, girl, how sweet you are. I'm drooling. Be mine. I'll make you golden. You'll walk in silk and bathe in gold." This fat, nasty, disgusting womanizer was so disgusting to Mary that she pushed him away with her eyes squeezed shut to avoid seeing his sweaty, disgusting face. And one day the girl could not stand it, ran home, cried, and told her grandmother everything. "I won't go to the farm anymore, Grandma, no matter what you do. That horrible stone is groping me, promising me a mountain of gold just to get me into bed with him, and I'm so disgusted. I don't know what to do." Grandma was indignant and raised her hands to the sky. "Look at him. What a bastard." "Not for nothing," the women whispered. "He wouldn't miss a single skirt. And he's got a wife and 3 kids, and he's still there. You damn dog. Come here. Let's have a word of advice. Have you heard what the granddaughter is grieving about? What's there to do? There's no other work in the village. Maybe we should go to the chairman and complain. Let him put a lid on this ghoul." Grandpa spat and smeared his hand. "What's the use? They're all in the same world, and they all wash their hands of each other. Maria's a good-looking girl. She should wear a bouquet. She won't have a life here. Let her go to town. It's crowded there. No one cares about anyone. Maybe she'll find a job. Maybe she'll marry well. All the young people have already gone there, and no one is still missing." Maria was both happy and frightened at such a prospect. And the woman, agreeing with her husband, ran to the neighbors to ask for money for the trip to her granddaughter. And for the first time, for they themselves did not have a penny, thanks to kind people, we collected a lot of money. Granny divided everything into piles, wrapped it in a handkerchief, and began to instruct her granddaughter. "Here's the deal. Don't keep everything in one place, or they might steal it. Put a little bit of it in different pockets and keep an eye on your wallet and bag. Otherwise, I know you. You open your mouth like a crow, and he's gone. I've calculated that you should have enough for a room and live for a month or 2. And then it's up to you. Don't be lazy. Remember what I said about dogs. That's it. It's time to sit for the road. It's time to sit for the road. It's time. Let me hug you, granddaughter. Don't forget your grandfather and grandmother. Come and visit." Grandma cried and waved after her for a long time, and Grandpa only grumbled, "What in God's name are you talking about? Think of good things or you'll get stolen or something else. Maria will do well. The girl is beautiful, not lazy, with a head." On the train, Maria was anxious, and all kinds of bad thoughts crept into her head. But at the train station, a very nice, intelligent man joined her in the compartment. They chatted cheerfully about different things. He joked and told interesting stories, and the girl laughed nonstop and completely relaxed. After a couple of hours, the man said goodbye cheerfully and went out, and Maria went into her bag for money, decided to order tea, and suddenly she didn't find her purse. Everything went cold inside her. Most of the money was in there. The dumbfounded girl rushed to the conductor. "God, my traveling companion took my wallet and money." How he managed, I do not understand. He wouldn't stop talking, and I couldn't stop listening. What should I do? She only shrugged her shoulders. "You young lady, you've never been on a train, and there are more crooks riding here than at train stations. You should have been more careful with your property. The rascal must have got off the train. Now it's all over." The rest of the way, Maria just roared like a beluga. She had no idea what she was going to do or where she was going. She scraped through her grandmother's pockets, but it was a drop in the ocean, not even enough for a room. She imagined horrible pictures of herself begging for alms, or worse. She scolded herself with the last words. God, what a fool. Well, told her grandmother as in water, look sharp, but no, what a good man. What will happen to me next if I have not yet reached and already got into the story? Outside the train station, Maria stared around frightened, clutching her traveling bag and her purse. She looked like a lost and cornered animal, and her mind was a mess. Suddenly she was approached by an older, stylishly and expensively dressed lady. She immediately identified with her keen eye the young, frightened provincial girl who was clearly in trouble. The stranger introduced herself. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Alice. I'm a recruiter. I recruit for a cleaning company. Is something wrong with you?" The girl was even more frightened because she had never heard such words before, and she answered quietly, sobbing, "And my name is. I came from the countryside to look for work. All my neighbors collected money from me, enough for a room and food for the first time. But a man sat next to me on the train and somehow managed to slip his confidence and steal my wallet. What to do, I do not know. But keep in mind, I will not do all sorts of impropriety. My grandmother warned me that in the big city they can offer such things." Alice laughed heartily. "You don't get it, silly. I'm recruiting maids, cleaners, not what you think. If you need such work, I can help you. At the same time, with the issue of housing will solve, because housekeepers tend to live in the house of the rich. Only I say it once, you need to work hard, follow all orders without question. The owners are not rude and not impertinent. Well, do not do you know what, as you put it, obscenities, and then there are such individuals, and strive to get to the rich husbands in bed." Maria calmed down, smiled, and nodded her head. "Then I agree. Don't worry, I'm not like that. I've never even had a boyfriend before. I will try very hard. You won't regret that I was recruited." On the same day, Alice gave Maria a full briefing. It took another couple of days to teach her all the tricks of the trade, how to use modern household appliances, and the girl was safely employed in a country mansion. They were bankers and very famous businessmen. She was accompanied by Jessica, another maid, and Anna, the cook. The head of the family, Connor, was a stern little man with glasses. He said a cursory hello to Maria without even looking at her, but his wife, Angela, did not like Maria right away. The lady was overweight, well dressed, her face grimaced with discontent. Her lips were pursed, and her gaze seemed to drill right through. She long and meticulously questioned Mary. Who she was and where she was from, told about the rules of their family, the daily schedule, and her duties. In the end, the woman said, "My son, Victor, also lives with us. He is a student, finishing his degree in economics. He's in class at the moment. I'm warning you, don't even look in his direction. I know you, you sneaky hicks." Maria could barely make it through the exam and was finally let go to the servants' quarters. There she met Jessica. The woman asked quietly, "What? Has our mega woman intimidated you yet? She's good at it, but don't be afraid. I will teach you everything. They pay good and stable money. You will not earn that much money anywhere. So agree to everything and do your job properly. And don't pay attention to Angela and try not to make her angry. Don't let her see you. She's always so unhappy." And so began Maria's working life. At first she did not do everything well because in the village she did not know any gadgets except a broom and a rag. But Jessica, as she promised, quickly taught her what to do, and in a month Maria was able to cope with any task on the fly. The wages really did pay a heck of a lot. Maria had never held that kind of money in her hands before. It would have been fine just work and be happy if it were not for Victor. When she first saw him, she was just cleaning the windows in the hallway. The girl stretched as hard as she could and tried to wipe as well as she could. The boy quietly came up behind her and admired her, a tall, slender, busty beauty, her blonde curls poking out from under her bonnet, drops of sweat on her temples. He could not take his eyes off the new maid and regarded her shamelessly. Maria felt someone's eyes on her and looked around. She was embarrassed by the fact that the son of the owners, a tall and athletic, good-looking guy, was looking at her so unceremoniously, and she stumbled and almost fell to the floor from the stepladder. But Victor deftly picked her up and prevented her from falling. Once in the arms of a guy, Maria was instantly dizzy. He smelled of expensive, tart male perfume, and the touch of his strong hands on her waist sent 1,000 shivers through her body. The girl immediately bounced back and mumbled, "I'm sorry, John, you startled me. I didn't expect to see anyone at this hour. It's morning. Everyone's at work." The young man winked at her. "Why so formal, John? Just call me Victor. We're basically the same age as you and I. And you, I take it, are Maria. Where do they make beauties like that around here? You shouldn't be a maid. You shouldn't be a maid. You shouldn't be a maid. You should work in a modeling agency." I'm impressed. The girl blushed at these compliments, completely embarrassed, apologized again, and grabbed a bucket and a rag and ran away. Next, she and Jessica went to whip out the pillows, and her partner whispered to her, "I saw the master's son rubbing up against you. Don't even think about it. Or else Megara would have you dead to rights. She'd take 3 skins for her son. He's a good-looking boy, though, I'll give him that. But you know, guys like us ain't got nothing but a bed anyway. So why ruin your career? If you embarrass yourself, they won't take you to any decent house." Maria nodded her head. "Yeah, I'll try to stay out of his sight. I don't want any trouble." From that day on, Maria's work became a cat and mouse affair, especially when the boy came home after school. The more the girl tried to keep out of Victor's sight, the more he would appear out of nowhere and try to talk to her. The conversation seemed harmless. Nothing like that, but the way he looked at her. It was more expressive than any ardent confession. That look made Maria's insides tear up and overturn, and millions of butterflies fluttered in her stomach. She would go into a stupor, blush, and like a little girl, just run away. Another weekend came. Jessica had been let go home and went into town, and the hosts had gone to see important guests too, and said they would be gone for sure until the evening. Maria had faithfully carried out all the errands and was perfectly free. But she had nowhere else to go. No one and nowhere was waiting for her in the capital, and it was a long ride home to the village and back. So the girl decided to take a walk along the forest paths, to breathe in the fresh air. She was enjoying the nature, breathing in the fresh aroma of pine needles and herbs, and thinking about her own thing. Suddenly, as if out of thin air, Victor appeared right in front of her. She even jerked in surprise. The guy laughed. "Hello, Maria. Did I scare you again? I'm sorry. I came home early, decided to go for a run. I often do sports here. I see my beauty coming. I can't believe I missed her." Maria blushed again, and suddenly Victor pressed her against the mighty pine tree and passionately dug into her plump, sensual lips. The girl tried to moo and fight back at first, but after a second she just got dizzy and her legs buckled from the pleasure, and she stopped resisting. How sweet those kisses and hugs of his were. The strong, trained body, the scent of the man, and that look that paralyzed her. Finally breaking free of the embrace and catching her breath, Maria began to babble. "Victor, don't! What are you doing? What do you want me for? I'm just an ordinary village maid. I'm not your equal. I'm not your equal. I'm not a match for you. We can't be together. Your mother warned me on the first day to stay away from you." The guy responded to her eagerly, "My silly girl, you don't know your worth. You're a beauty, a goddess. You'll give 100 points to all those fancy chickens. Ever since I've seen you, I've lost all peace and sleep. I swear it. You're all I can think about. Why do you keep pushing me away? I feel that you like me too." But Maria suddenly cried and ran to her room. She closed herself inside, fell on the bed, and sobbed even harder. And Victor was right. They were drawn to each other like a magnet, and there was nothing they could do about it. And now, after such a passionate kiss, she was literally shaking. Her whole being, which until then had never known male love and caress, literally demanded a continuation. She scolded herself. "What kind of fool am I? Again I look for myself problems on his head. Why did I have the misfortune to fall in love with him?" There was a quiet knock on the door. Victor whispered, "Maria, open up, please. I beg you, we need to talk." The girl exhaled. wiped away her tears, and went to open the door. There was a guy standing on the doorstep, smiling guiltily and holding a charming bouquet of daisies in his hand. "I'm sorry if I scared you or hurt you. I didn't mean to, honest. You know you're the most beautiful girl I've ever met, the purest and most open, and I'm definitely in love with you. I called my parents. They will be gone for a long time. We're all alone in the house, except for the gardener. Let's go to my room. It's kind of awkward to talk in here." And Maria, of course, went. They talked long and warmly. Victor confessed his love for her, and then he began to cover her neck and body with gentle kisses and whisper such words to her. Well, that was the day of their first intimacy. The boy was amazed that Maria was a virgin, for she was already 19 years old. By city standards, that is simply unthinkable. He became even more affectionate and reverent toward her, realizing that she had given him the dearest thing. From that day on, they began to meet, first secretly, sneaking kisses like schoolboys on every corner, and then officially. After all, you can't hide a thing in a bag. Victor really loved Maria, he was not playing, and intended to marry her. The guy sincerely believed that his parents would understand him, because true love is more important than officials and regalia. But when he announced it officially, at dinner, and introduced Maria as his bride, a deafening scandal broke out in the family. Angela screamed like a madwoman. "It'll never happen." "Victor, have you eaten too much? What was it that surprised you in bed? That you decided to marry the maid? Do you want the whole press and high society to rub our name in it? It's an unheard of disgrace." Then she turned with a twisted face toward Maria and shouted, "Get out of here. I knew I shouldn't have hired a pretty hillbilly as a maid. Well done, you're not lost. You're like a tick, you're all over my son. You want a residence in the capital and a life in chocolate. You'll get by. You'd better earn it first. You're used to spreading your legs." Maria sobbed and tried to justify herself. "Why would you do that? Slava and I really love each other. I don't want anything from you." Angela pointed to the door. "Get out, you're fired. I'll complain to the agency and they won't take you to any more decent homes." Maria ran off in tears to gather her things. Svetka whispered to her, "And I told you, Victor will make a fool of himself, and that's it. Mama won't let you two ever get together, much less get married." The girl sobbed. "I don't believe it. He said he loved me and couldn't live without me. He's coming for me now, and we'll leave this house together." Svetka only twisted her temple and went away, out of harm's way, or else she will fall under the hot hand. In the meantime, the battles continued. Victor shouted emotionally, "Ah, so. Then I'll go too. We'll get by on our own. If millions are more important to you than the happiness of your beloved son, I love her, don't you understand? I really love her." Then my father intervened. Until then, he had been watching in silence. "All right, son. Here's the scale. On one half you put your career, your wealth, your rich and well-fed life, and our help. And on the other, you're Maria, and that's it. How long can you survive with her in some dorm with cockroaches, without normal conditions? How long can you stand working 12 hours? You'll run away from such a life in a month, only I won't take you back. That's my condition. You choose. If you leave with her now, I'll block all your cards and you'll never come back here again. And there's your sweetheart, by the way, leaving with a suitcase. Why don't you run after her?" Maria turned around for a second and tried to catch Victor's gaze. But he lowered his eyes and didn't move. The girl shouted after him, "Truth, bastard, I hate you." And she ran away in tears. Everything inside her was boiling and bubbling. Grandma was right, and so was Svetka. They all want the same thing. How could he? He promised he wouldn't betray her, and we'd be together to the end. He said such words, swore his love. And he did. A mama's boy. I despise him. In love, spread my ears, swam. The good thing was that she had hardly spent the money she had earned during those months, and she managed to rent a corner from a wonderful woman, Claudia Matvievna, on the outskirts of the city. But when Maria realized a month later that she was pregnant, she was horrified and burst into tears again, telling her landlady everything honestly. Claudia at first began to advise her. Why don't you tell your fiancé that you're pregnant? Would he take pity and marry you? Or will he help you? It happens, but Maria only waved her hand. No, Baba-Clava. He's not getting married. He can't get away from his mother. If that bitch finds out I'm pregnant, she'll drive me crazy. I'd rather have an abortion. Claudia shook her head and looked at the girl judgmentally. Don't you dare, little girl. Don't take such a sin on your soul. You'll get him back on his feet. You won't be the first or the last. I'll help in any way I can. I'll keep an eye on her. And killing a living soul is the last thing to do. A child is God's plan. It's not given to everyone. I would have given anything at one time to have children. But no, God didn't give it to me, that's all. That's how they began to live. Maria got a job at a kiosk nearby selling pastries. Ashat, an Armenian, saw that the woman had a slightly protruding belly and understood everything, but he took her to work anyway. He knew there were not many people running for the job, but she would hold on to it with her teeth. And so it turned out. Maria traded right up to the time she was in labor. When the contractions started, she called Ashat and said in a panic, I closed the kiosk. I'm going to the maternity hospital. The keys are where I usually keep them. Don't take my place, I'm begging you. Put me on the night shift or 2 days. When they brought her a big rosy-cheeked Anna in the maternity ward, she kissed her and cried. The baby looked so much like Victor. The woman whispered, We do not need your daddy. Well, the hell with it. We'll make it on our own, my dear. We'll make it on our own, my dear. We'll manage. The first year of the baby's life was especially difficult for Maria. The woman was literally torn between work and the baby. She slept for 4 hours and then only part-time. Thanks to Baba-Clava, she helped out, and Anna was quiet, not giving much trouble to the elderly nurse. And then it got easier. Anna went to nursery school. If she was sick, she stayed with Grandma Clava or sat in Maria's booth on sacks in the corner, drawing. Not once in all this time did Victor make himself known in any way. He simply erased that fleeting romance with the maid from his life, and that was it. And Maria, no matter how hard she tried, could not get Slava out of her heart. He sat there firmly, though she now had mixed feelings towards him. Hatred, anger, contempt, love, tenderness, awe. She understood that they were never destined to even meet again. He was too high, flying a bird, and she should forget him and go on living, but she could not. On that fateful night, Maria was hurrying home to her daughter. She was just crossing the road at the intersection. The light turned green for pedestrians, and Maria started walking. And then a bright red sports car flew straight at her at a huge speed. The woman only had time to notice that the driver was a blonde, and that was it. Next came the squeal of brakes and darkness. Victor, of course, knew none of this since he had been a coward and betrayed Maria. They had not spoken. His parents persuaded him a year later to marry Dori, the daughter of a millionaire banker and owner of the coolest, most expensive gas stations in town. The wedding was magnificent and pompous. The chosen one was a platinum blonde doll, skillfully molded by the best professionals. The figure is also without flaws, and everything would be fine. But for one thing, Victor did not like her. In fact, this arrogant, cheeky girl was frankly unpleasant to him. Dori, on the contrary, liked Victor externally very much, athletic, tall, pumped up, and handsome. That's why the wedding took place. But after quickly satisfying all her sexual desires in bed with him, the glamorous woman frankly bored. She wanted to drive to fly to Paris or relax in Bali, to be carried in her arms and worshipped, and fans used to do so. Her husband was different. He burned day and night at work. After all, Daddy had given him a position as manager of a large bank. When she looked into his eyes, she wanted to see admiration, but there was clearly red contempt. This infuriated the woman so much that, without thinking, she got herself a lover out of boredom, and then another one, and then another one. Victor sensed something was wrong and began to express his indignation. They often began to argue. He couldn't understand how a married lady could go out all night and come home drunk in the morning. It was unheard of. But Dory would put him off every time. "You live in my mansion, and you work in my father's bank. So sit quietly and keep your mouth shut. Or I'll complain to Daddy, and they'll throw you out like a dog. What am I supposed to do with you at home? Stand at the stove and give birth to screaming babies? Oh no, you don't. That's not what I was born for." Victor was indignant. "What did you get married for anyway? I don't understand. If you don't want a family and children?" The woman laughed. "For the same reason you did. Who asked us? My parents benefited from it, that's all. Now they have a powerful corporation. Everyone is happy, and so am I, by the way. In high society, I have a decent spouse, and I'm a lady of status, and where I go at night is none of your business. I'm bored in bed with you. I'm sick of it all." So they lived like cats and dogs, two complete strangers under one roof. They slept in separate rooms. Their intimacy faded away. 1,000, 1,000,000 times Victor regretted that he had chickened out and betrayed his beloved. After all, he had never forgotten Maria, and he knew that he would never love anyone so much again. Victor reread the diagnosis over and over again, whispering to himself, "Maria, Maria, my God, is Anna my daughter? My beloved woman lives in poverty and is now dying, and I am sitting here drinking cognac, With trembling hands, he dialed the number of the hospital and found out exactly where Maria was lying. Without putting it off, the man went there and decided to talk to the attending physician. The time was late, but money solves everything, and the doctor agreed to meet. He sighed and answered, "I'll be honest with you. She's in the worst possible situation. As a result of the collision, she has a serious brain injury, has been in a coma for a month, and is not making any progress. The only chance to change something is to perform an urgent operation on the brain and remove the damaged areas. But here, too, there is no guarantee that the woman will survive it or survive at all. Personally, I will not take on that responsibility. There is only one specialist in the capital, a virtuoso of his craft and a lover of experiments, and that is Mark. Ask him. Maybe he will operate. And then it is a very expensive operation, and the family has no money. As I understand, it is not available." So Victor was shaking. He was almost screaming, "Give me Mark's coordinates. I'll meet him tomorrow. Can I see her for a few minutes, please?" The doctor just waved his hand. "What the hell? Patient is not alive anyway." A man quietly entered the intensive care ward. What he saw shocked him. Instead of a fresh, glowing beauty on the bed lay a haggard woman. Her eyes were sunken inward, her cheeks were gone, her complexion blended with the sheets, not a single blood vessel, and her skinny body was wrapped in dozens of gauges and wires. Victor instinctively took her hand. Ah was icy and dry and began to whisper to her, "Maria, my girl, forgive me, you bastard. You're not going to die, do you hear? I'll lay my bones, but I'll pull you out of death's clutches for your daughter's sake, for ours. I still love you. Do you hear? Believe me." It even seemed to him that her eyelids twitched, and he began to ask her forgiveness again and again. The very next day, Victor put everything aside and went to meet Mark, a renowned medical luminary. Mark carefully studied all of Maria's medical documents and thought for a while, then said, "Operation can be done, of course, but it will be only at my own risk. There is no 50% certainty that the patient will survive. It's too late, you know. Most likely, an irreversible process has already begun, and the woman could either die immediately without regaining consciousness or remain. How shall I put it gently? Confident, I'll tell you the amount. It's very large, I warn you, and I'll stress once again that the risk of death is enormous. And I only agree to this because it is the first time for me too, purely out of experimental interest. Victor began to calm him down. Well, you said yourself that if nothing is done, Maria will die anyway. There is no chance that she will come out of her coma and get better. Isn't she incompetent now? So why not try to save her life if there's even a 1% chance that a miracle will happen? The sum was truly enormous, even for a man as wealthy as Victor. He emptied all his cards and accounts and quickly sold only the recently purchased expensive Porsche, and that was barely enough to cover all the expenses. Immediately, he made a transfer of funds to the clinic and called Baba Clava. Good afternoon, Claudia. It's John here to see you. Remember when we talked about the loan for your friend Maria? I have some news for you. Give me the address. I'll be right there. On the way, the businessman stopped at the Children's World store and bought Anna a new jacket, booties and many more clothes, toys, and 2 bags of groceries. He had a hard time finding the right house number in the yards. The dwelling was old, but quite well maintained and comfortable. They were already waiting for him there. The kettle was boiling in the kitchen. An old woman was fussing and setting the table. Anna hung around and helped her. An excited Claudia said hello, invited her guest to the table, and asked, "Thank you, John, for not forgetting about us, huh? Will you give us a loan? Will they approve it? Because the hospital says it's already too late, and Maria is unlikely to survive, and I don't want to believe it." And the elderly woman began to wipe away the tears that ran into her eyes with a corner of her handkerchief. The man hastened to reassure her, "Don't worry, you won't need a loan, and no one would give you such a huge amount with your income. I have already paid for everything, the operation the day after tomorrow at the Institute of Neurosurgery. It will be the best luminaries in the capital. Mark, I have agreed. Let's pray and hope for the best." The old woman even fluttered her arms and could not believe what she had heard. "God, you are our Savior, our benefactor. That's a lot of money. God give Maria a chance to recover. We'll work it all off as long as she survives." Anna suddenly came quietly and hugged Victor tightly in her warm little arms. She looked directly into his eyes and said, "Thank you, Uncle. I'll pray for you now, and for my mother, that she survives. She's not going to die, is she? She and Grandma Clava are all I've got." Victor instinctively hugged the baby and felt such warmth and tenderness inside, gently flicked her nose and held out 2 huge bags. "It's all for you, you little brat. Go measure it." The woman and the girl gasped, and the little girl ran happily trying on new clothes and looking at toys. And the businessman began to put on the table products from the remaining bags. "This is for you too. For the first time, you'll figure it out. I think I got the essentials." Baba Clava even cried, "Thank you very much, my dear man, for being so concerned about other people. Nowadays, it's time to forget your own relatives, let alone other people's." Victor suddenly said in a hoarse, disruptive voice, "It's no stranger to Maria. Do you understand? This is my first love, the strongest. And I betrayed her once. I was a coward, a bastard, not a nice man. I ruined my fate and hers. Maybe Anna is my daughter too, I don't know. So I really want her to live, and I will beg her forgiveness on my knees." And he waved his hand and walked away, trying to suppress the sobs that were bursting from his chest. On the day of surgery, Victor did not go to the bank at all. Shifting all responsibilities to the deputy, he walked like a tiger through a cage along the hospital corridor and waited. It seemed as if time had stopped altogether, and the hand of the clock froze and did not move. He asked the Lord with all his sincerity, in his own words, "Dear God, help me. I wish Mary had lived. I know that I am a scoundrel and very guilty before her, but you see that I still love her. I don't want anyone else, only her. Let her get well, please." On the couch, Balaclava and Anna were sitting quietly. The girl was not crying, not hysterical, apparently also focused on praying and waiting. 4 hours went by, and finally, a disheveled Mark came out of the operating room, took off his cap, and approached Victor. "So, gentlemen, you can rejoice. I don't want to boast, but I am very happy with the result. Now let's look at the dynamics. But the chances that the woman will come to her senses are great, so let's hope for the best. You can't come to her yet. She is in intensive care. Come back tomorrow." Victor began to shake hands with the professor and thank him. And Anna also ran to the doctor and said tearfully, "Thank you for saving Mommy. She's going to be okay, right?" The doctor averted his eyes and answered quietly, "I really want to believe that your mother will get better. But it's not all up to me either. I did everything I could. The operation was a success, and Maria finally came to her senses." As if out of a thick, lingering fog, she heard her daughter's voice. "Hi, Mommy. How are you doing? Are you feeling better? When are you going to open your eyes? I miss you so much. And I pray every day. Grandma Clava and I are going to get you some medicine, and there's someone who wants to talk to you." And then Maria heard the husky voice she'd never been able to forget. "Maria, my darling. It's me, Victor. Forgive me, darling. I'm the last bastard. I betrayed you so much. Can you believe, after all these years, I still can't forget you? I remember everything. Our kisses, your overflowing laughter, your big, beautiful eyes. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I really want you to get better." Everything inside the woman suddenly turned upside down and warm. She gathered herself as best she could and wanted to shout out to the world, "I haven't forgotten you either. I love you too." But it was only possible to open my eyes slightly and whisper, "Me too." All the sensors on the life support system suddenly glowed red and beeped, and a frightened Victor ran out to get the nurse. "Here, quick, Maria is awake." Immediately a bunch of staff rushed into the room, started a commotion, started looking at the woman's pupils and checking for reactions. The man was escorted out the door. Anna and her grandmother came up and got very frightened when they saw the panic in the room. The baby cried immediately, "Mommy's not feeling well, is she? Why are there so many doctors there? Has she gotten worse?" The man cradled the baby in his arms and comforted her. "On the contrary, honey, don't worry, Mommy is awake. Can you imagine? She heard your voice and mine and came to her senses. I can't even believe it." Finally, they were allowed to see Maria. The woman saw all her family and friends and cried. Anna threw herself around her mother's neck and began to hug and kiss her. Maria wailed, "Daughter, my darling, how I worried about you. How glad I am that all is well. Balaclava, thank you for looking after my mischievous girl, not abandoning her, not sending her to an orphanage. Victor, how are you here? I thought we'd never see each other again." The old lady said, "So he's the director of the bank where Anna and I were taking the loan. John paid for your operation. If it wasn't for him, I don't know. No one gave you a chance. The only one who operated at his own risk was the famous Professor Mark, and that was because he was miraculously persuaded by Victor. So there you go." Maria looked at Victor with gratitude and such tenderness and said quietly, "Thank you for life. You're my guardian angel now. Victor, I think we need to talk, don't you?" Anna and her grandmother nodded understandingly and left the room. The man sat down closer and looked at and admired the short-haired sparrow with the huge, appealing eyes. He marginally compared her to Dory's doll-like artificial face and realized that he couldn't be under the same roof with her for 1 second. The man took Maria's hand and said, looking directly into her eyes, "Sweetheart, forgive me if you can. I'm so sorry for you. I chickened out back then and went along with my parents. I regretted it 100 times. They talked me into marrying Dory, the daughter of a millionaire, but she and I are complete strangers. We live like cats and dogs. I still have you in my heart and I don't want anybody else." Maria's eyes immediately filled with tears. "So you're married. So it's not going to work out again. But I want you to know that Anna is your daughter. I found out about the pregnancy after we broke up, so I decided to keep the baby." Victor waved his hands. "The fact that Anna is mine, I have already understood. I guessed it. Don't say that. I won't leave you now. You know that. I'll talk to Dory today and we'll divorce her. I want to live with you and my daughter. Understand? I'm begging you. Trust me this time, please." Maria grinned bitterly. "Do you think she'll give you a divorce that easily? What if she doesn't? I'm scared. I remember how your mother humiliated and embarrassed me back then, and I don't want to go through that again." The man answered quietly, "Don't worry and don't think about bad things. Get better. I bought all the medicines and I will come every day. Why don't you tell me what happened? Why don't you tell me what happened? Why didn't they find the guy who hit you?" The woman sighed and shifted her shoulders. "I hardly remember anything. My green light came on. I went to the crosswalk on Pushkin, and suddenly out of the darkness jumped this red Marina. I only out of the corner of my eye managed to see that the driver was a blonde. That's all." Victor bent down and kissed Maria tenderly. "I'll take care of it. The culprit must be punished. Well, I'm off. It's time to go. Know that I'm happy I found you, and I won't let myself lose you again, and I won't let anyone hurt you." Maria wiped away a tear. "However, I love you, Victor, and all these years I have never been able to tear you from my heart." Victor returned home late at night. To his surprise, Dory was home and waiting for him, looking anxious. "Where have you been for so long? What's going on? You've never been late before. Dad said you sold your car and withdrew all the money from your accounts. What's that for, I wonder?" The man sighed and answered, "Dory, we need to have a serious talk. I needed the money to help someone who is in trouble. I want to divorce you. We've been strangers for a long time and we don't like each other, and you know that very well. So why torture each other? Besides, you have someone else, I know it. I also met a woman that I foolishly lost years ago, and I still love her very much. So," Dory's face twisted with anger, "is this the maid your mother kicked out of the house? And you spent all your money on her? Are you out of your mind? I'm not giving you a divorce, you know that. I don't want any more gossip in high society. I'll call your father right now and you'll be naked and barefoot." Surprisingly, Victor was not frightened or upset at all. On the contrary, he was relieved. "I don't care, do what you want. I'm packing my things, I'm leaving, and we're getting a divorce. It should have been done a long time ago." Dory was stunned by her husband's determination, for he had never crossed her before. She was hysterical, screaming, and began to call her beloved daddy, and Victor silently packed his things in his suitcase. He wanted to hurry to get rid of this affair, in which he'd been trapped for years at the instigation of his parents. Now he had someone to risk and wanted to radically change his life for the sake of Maria and his daughter. The scandal was deafening. The millionaire was terribly furious. He immediately fired Victor from his position as a banker, blocked all his accounts, and even came to the hospital, trying to intimidate Maria. But he did not succeed. This time the woman stood her ground. "You can even kill me if you want to, but I won't give up Victor. We love each other, do you understand or not?" To be on the safe side, for the duration of the scandal and the proceedings, Baba went to her friend's house in the village, just to be on the safe side. I don't know what those crazy millionaires would get into their heads. Victor wasted no time either. He moved into his rented apartment for the time being and decided to look through the security cameras at the very intersection where Maria had been hit. What he saw shocked him. The red foreign car belonged to his father-in-law, and his wife, Dory, was behind the wheel. Not alone, but with a young lover. The tape clearly shows her hitting Maria and then driving away without even looking back. What a twist. The man was furious. What a bitch. How is that possible? Hit a man and not even get out of the marina to check on him. No help. How could anyone live in peace after that? Go to expensive salons, tanning salons, fitness classes, knowing that you may have killed a man. Such cynicism was simply not in his mind. He made arrangements with the city's camera company and took the tape. Without thinking twice, he dialed Dory's number. She answered immediately. "What, honey? Is your chicken scared? You come to your senses. That's it. Come back at once and apologize." While I'm being kind, the man interrupted her menacingly. "Listen to this. I've got the surveillance tape and it shows you hitting Maria and fleeing the scene of the crime. And I'll go to the police with her tomorrow. How much jail time do you think you'll get? And what will they say about you in high society? You're such a bitch. You almost killed a man yourself. You have a young lover, and you dare accuse me of something. Or should I show that tape to your father? I guess I'll do that. I'll send him a copy so he can admire his precious daughter." Dory's voice trembled, and she immediately changed her tone. "Victor, listen. Don't get so hot. Don't go to the police. I don't want to go to jail. I won't survive there. And don't let your father. He'll kill me. You know him. What do you want? Let's make a deal." Victor said, "You will transfer to my account the money that went into Maria's surgery and convince your daddy not to touch Maria and me, and you will disappear from my life forever. Otherwise, I will carry out my threat. Is that clear?" Dory quickly gibbered. "Yeah, sure, I'll do it. We'll leave quietly and amicably. Thank you. You're right. I never loved you either. The other night I had too much to drink, and I got cold feet when I realized I'd hit a man. I drove away quickly, and that was it. What was I supposed to do? Voluntarily go to jail?" The man sighed. "God be your judge, I've said it all. Bye." Dory kept her word. She transferred the money he had spent on the operation to Victor, and the millionaire daddy stopped pestering Victor and Maria. The woman quickly went on the mend. Victor visited her in the hospital every day. They talked at length, held hands, and felt their hearts beating in unison. Soon Maria was discharged home, Grandma Clava returned from the village, and at a family meeting it was decided to live together in the old woman's house. She had asked for it. "Dear ones, all of you live with me. I'm all alone during this time. I became so attached to Mary. She is like family to me now, even closer. The house is good, of course. It could use some repairs. It hasn't seen a man's hand for many years. And if I die, you'll keep it. I don't have any relatives anyway, but I've got my own yard, a vegetable garden, and a place for my kid to run around. And I'm not bored in my old age." Everyone happily agreed. In just a couple of months, Victor did a major renovation, expanded the kitchen, equipped the children's room, and added another room, a living room. Everything turned out modern and cozy. The man did not regret at all that he was not rich now. Got a job in a small firm as an economist, and worked hard. He forbade Maria to trade in the kiosk, and so she was not bored at home, bought her a sewing marionette. After all, the woman had dreamed of it since childhood, and finally she enrolled in sewing courses. She began to do well, and soon her first orders came. Maria could not rejoice. She no longer had to tear herself up and carry boxes and work 12 hours. She enjoyed her home, her family, and her favorite hobby. Victor had changed a lot over the years, from a cheerful, carefree major to a serious and responsible family man. 3 months passed. Anna called the man Uncle Victor, and it just made him cringe. And he decided that it was time to tell the girl the whole truth and put her in his name, as it should be. In the evening, the man sat down next to the child in a chair and began an important conversation. "Anna, I need to talk to you seriously. You see, I'm not just a stranger's uncle to you, but your real daddy, and I would like to call you my daughter and give you my last name. What do you think about that?" The girl looked at him strangely and suddenly asked, "If you are my daddy, why didn't you live with us before?" Where have you been all this time? So it was because of you that my mother cried a lot at night. Did you leave us? You didn't love us? Why do you love us now? What if you go away again and Mommy cries? Because if you love me, you don't leave me. Anna forcefully threw the pencil on the floor and ran away in tears. Victor was very upset, though he understood that his daughter was right about everything. If you love, you don't leave, and he did. Maria began to calm him down. I told you it's too early. She won't understand. She's too young. Baba Klava decided to intervene in the conversation, although she usually did not, but here it's too serious. Don't be angry. I'll talk to her. She's not small. She's just resentful of her father. After all, she saw her mother suffer for so many years. I'll have to explain it to her properly. She's a smart girl, and she's mature beyond her years. She'll understand. Claudia quietly entered Anna's room. She was lying with her head on the pillow, sobbing. The pensioner began to talk, as if not with her, but simply, there lived a prince and a princess. They loved each other very much. But an evil witch came and broke them up, separated them. The girl suddenly said angrily, Stop treating me like a little girl, Grandma. I'm an adult now, and I understand everything. My father abandoned my mother, and he didn't need us for so many years. And now he loves us, you see, and then suddenly he doesn't. Is that it? The old woman sighed. Well, if you're an adult, then listen to another fairy tale. That's right, and you're right. Your father was young, and he listened to his mother, and she forbade him to love your mother. Yes, he chickened out. They broke up. Your mother realized she was pregnant with you, but she didn't say anything to her fiancé. So you can't blame him either. He simply didn't know about you. Do you understand? And when he read the documents and realized that it was his beloved woman who was dying, what did he do? That's right. He saved her, just like in the fairy tale. And why? Because, my dear, he loves her very much. Doesn't that make sense? Your daddy was very happy when he found out he had a daughter. Now you're together as a family. What's wrong with that? Tell me. Don't you love him? The little girl answered quietly, I love you, and I want it to be that way forever. Baba Klava then added, Well then, why are you offended? All of us are not angels, and often we do not only good things, but also nasty, disgusting. Nothing can be done about it. That's the way of man. The main thing is that your father realized his mistake, repented, and now you are together, and it's not our business to judge him, you little brat. Parents should be accepted and loved no matter what they are, because they're the people closest to you. Do you understand? The girl wiped her nose, smiled, and hugged her grandmother. Baba Klava, how clever you are. You told me everything so well. And why did I, stupid, get mad at Daddy? She rushed happily into the living room and took Victor by the hand. So, Daddy, shall we go to tea? Dibs on that big chocolate candy over there. The man happily picked up the baby in his arms. Daughter, my sweetheart, you're not mad at Daddy anymore? She twirled her head. No, I'm not. I love you. You'll always live with us now, won't you? And Mommy won't cry? Victor kissed his treasure and promised, I swear to you, Mom will never cry again, and neither will you, because I will never let anyone hurt you. Then they all drank fragrant tea with sweets and cakes, which Maria and Grandma Klava had baked together, talked, and made plans for tomorrow. Maria sat next to Victor, snuggled up to him, and realized that this was a woman's happiness. It had finally come to her. How good and calm she felt. And Victor's parents lived out their lives alone in their huge mansion. Angela had become a bitter, bitter old woman over the years, nagging her infirm husband mercilessly. She cursed the maid who had taken their son away. After all, Victor had stopped communicating with them altogether. Only once he called and said that he was absolutely happy with Maria and his daughter, and very sorry that he had missed out on so many years because of his own mother's hatred. Angela wandered through the empty rooms and literally howled with longing and loneliness. She never realized that it was her own fault, and things could have been very different. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel, like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.